I'm excited to transition to the next portion of our webcast, which is our conversation with CHROs who have really demonstrated their resilience during this turbulent time. Our first CHRO on the panel is James Jones, and he's the Vice President of Human Resources and the Chief Ethics Officer for Emerson. In his role, he provides HR leadership for over 85,000 employees in over 200 locations in the world. He has over 30 years of HR experience and labor relations experience at Emerson, and he also serves on the board of governors for the HR Policy Association. Our other panelist is Oracle's CHRO, Joyce Westerdahl. She has been leading HR at Oracle for over 20 years, and she has been with Oracle for 30 years. She has led a number of transformation efforts, both digital and employee related, for our organization that's made up of more than 135,000 employees around the world. In addition, she's very dedicated to helping students gain industry relevant skills through Oracle's Academy and the Oracle Education Foundation. And she's also the executive director for Oracle's Women Leadership Program. So Joyce and James, thank you for joining our panel.
Thank you.
We have a number of different questions that we would like to throw out at you as it relates to being resilient through this pandemic and through challenging times. And I'd like to start off with one that's really just focused on, as you think back over the last 6 months or so, what have been some of the most surprising challenges that you faced during the pandemic? So James, I'd like to start with you.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to address that. I think there's a couple things that come to mind, and the primary item is trying to explain to our employees why we were an essential business in all facets of what we do. And, you know, it was really difficult that when they're at home and their neighbors are still at home and they're having to come to work, and to explain that at the you know, the neighborhood block parties if they were having those. But it is hard to explain in the fact that it was safer to be at work than it was out in your communities, where lots of things were still happening and the rules in the different communities were different, so no consistency. And you know, many of our products provide support for the life-saving industries, such as the pharmaceuticals. We make products for the ventilators. So tying that to our communications was really critical. The second piece was maintaining the spirit and the culture of our company was really difficult during these times. We're a blue chip company. We pay dividends year over year, quarter over quarter, and we had that success going back 130 years. And we were also in the middle of planning for our CEO succession. So between that, which is kind of like having 3 scorpions in a bottle, you know, competing for the top job, at the same time, we're attacked by an activist. We have global restructure taking place, and then COVID hits. So all of those dimensions coming together made it really, really challenging.
Right. Great. Thanks for sharing that, James. And Joyce, I know you have a couple of surprising challenges to share as well.
Ours are kind of the opposite, where we really adapted quickly to work from home, and many of our employees already were working from home, so it was a pretty smooth transition. But it went from working from home to working all the time. So we've experienced a lot of work fatigue, not taking the breaks. There's Zoom fatigue. You're on calls all day long, camera ready. When do you eat? When do you have a slight break has been tough. And then added our working moms with having their kids at home. And, you know, that definitely is a struggle, and getting them educated and taken care of and watched has been challenging.
For sure. There's so many memes out there about Zoom fatigue. I can relate to them all the time when I see them on the internet. Next question. Let's talk about any new directives that have come from your board or from your CEO that you've had to adapt to? And how's that played out for you? James, you want to start there?
Sure, be happy to. You know, one of the things that was really at the forefront for us, and a rightful challenge from the board, is a complete review of our supply chain globally. You know, we had already taken on a strategy to make in region for the region, but as we found out the financial health of some of our suppliers and of their second and third tier suppliers was quite challenging. So we're doing a complete scrub of all of our essential parts and products. And you know, you're only as strong as that weakest link, and we're trying to really sniff out all those weak links. So that's one primary challenge for us. And the second was is knowing where our employees are at all times. We had employees, as I'm sure Joyce may have as well, that were visiting customers, servicing oil rigs out in the middle of the ocean somewhere, and they got stranded. They couldn't get home. So that challenge of enhancing our international SOS partnership and just knowing where everybody is and finding a way to get them back home.
Great. I talked to another CHRO of an oil and gas company in Houston a few weeks ago, and he shared the same example, James, that, you know, he had folks that were deployed on an assignment and they were stranded for over 100 days, right? Their country that they were in wouldn't let them out, couldn't get them back into the United States. And, you know, some of the other funny stories that I've heard about surprising challenges is just inventory related, where people said, oh, go back to the office, grab your laptop and whatever you think you need. And they saw employees walking out to their car with desks and office chairs. And so, you know, it was just unprecedented times for sure that we've seen folks doing things. Joyce, can you give me an example of an initiative that you've implemented in response to the pandemic that you'll be keeping or even expanding on once things get back to normal?
Well, I think it's actually two things. One, two major things. We are really re-examining our real estate footprint, that we don't need an office in every suburb around the world. And we may not even need the formal headquarters. We're just looking at what does a hub system look like, and then have the rest of the folks work from home. The kind of the interesting thing in learning is that here we were pushing for all this kind of concierge learning and very much targeted to individuals and really exploiting more the high touch learning. And with COVID, that's put us all back into, you know, online and digital learning. So we're trying to reimagine that in a new version that does continually push customization, individual training tracks, but certainly not in the direction we were headed with more high touch classroom or offsite settings. So that's kind of interesting.
And you know, that real estate initiative that you mentioned is something that I've heard in talking with other CHROs in the last couple of months, where there may have been opposition to working from home, and now they've seen the increased productivity. They've seen the need for folks to be home and are really rethinking the justification for some of the expenses of location. So I think that's something that a lot of folks are facing and looking for answers to solve there. James, let's talk a bit about a few areas where you've had to apply some reimagination to your people processes. And I know one is around recruiting that you shared with me. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. You know, one of the things we like to pride ourselves on is our on-campus recruiting and those sorts of activities. And we're really a high-touch organization. So we take our senior executives to the universities with us. And so that ability to interact with the top brass, so to speak, is really invaluable when there's a tipping point in a decision for these students. So, you know, we've missed that. We've had to governor that back to about 50%, change the way that we do those virtual experiences. and delay bringing those students on site for us this year, and really get creative about how we get those hands-on experiences and exposures in smaller clusters to the actual learning process for them. So that's one thing that we've had to modify.
Great, thanks for sharing that. It's such an interesting time for students at all levels. You know, we focus so much on are the kids going back to school or not going back to school, and to think about these kids graduating and looking for jobs right now during this time. I love that you're doing different things to really reach out to them. Joyce, how about you about reimagining some of the people processes?
So with onboarding, we had to really lift and shift to do it more digitally, and that was a big change. And what was also scary for us, we pushed ahead with our college hires, and we pushed ahead with our internship programs, and we have big engineering internship programs, and we made the decision here in the United States and in India to do them virtually, and they were quite successful. And we said but it was frightening. I mean, it was frightening, and we sent kits home and had their orientations done there with their, equipment set. And a lot of it is more of a teaching for the internship program. So we had all of our development team was active in teaching a class every week to this team. And then we did something we normally don't do. We kind of wait through the year to put the offers out for those seniors. And we went ahead and extended offers as they finish up their summer. And as they go into their senior year, they know they have already an offer in hand from Oracle. So we pushed through it, and a lot of other folks thought we were kind of nuts, just, versus delaying. But I think it worked for us in the end.
I think so too, because it sounds like both you and James are really focused on enhancing that candidate experience, right? For the kids, whether they're graduating students or interns. And that makes all the difference in the world, right? If you're going to retain those folks and get them successfully onboarded. I had a call with a CHRO in Boston a few weeks ago, speaking of onboarding, and she told me that her first day on the job, she had accepted the offer and was starting in her CHRO role. And it was the day that all the employees were sent home. And that was her.
That was her car by herself on her cell phone.
Right.
And I just think, wow, we're all going to have great stories to tell someday about navigating all of this.
Yeah.
So one of the topics that's really evolved in my conversations with CHROs over the last couple of months, as it's moved away from how do you send people home, how do you furlough them, how do you bring them back? We figured all of that out, but then new challenges and new opportunities have emerged that have really gotten our attention. And so we've seen anxiety peak for employees, and well-being and wellness, kind of go by the wayside. Joyce, as you mentioned in some of your opening comments, with people just working nonstop, they can't turn it off. So, what are you both doing to ensure your employees are safe, well, and taking care of themselves? So, Joyce, I'll have you start off here if you don't mind.
Well, our CEO, Safra Katz, is helping us kick off a Recharge campaign. It kicks off actually next week. And I don't think this is unlike any other company, but we noticed that our medical spend basically went to zero. Our mental health spend has increased, and we actually increased the free benefits there. But she's partnering with us, pushing a Recharge campaign where we're asking you to go to your annual appointments, don't delay those, as well as take your vacation and enjoy it. Even if you can't go anywhere, take a real vacation day on that, whether it's a Friday or the whole week, and have some things planned with the family. So we are concerned about fatigue, because we feel this is going to continue, and this is the way we will be selling and supporting our customers. And so we also need to take care of ourselves.
Right. So you mentioned the taking the time off, the telehealth, new programs and paid leave. I know we put in place.
Yeah, we did increase our COVID leave. We didn't have a COVID leave.
Well, right.
We've introduced a COVID leave that we put in place for an additional 80 hours you can take if you're affected by COVID, not you personally, but your family. Even if you're struggling with your kids and you don't have the right support at home, all COVID related kind of situations, we have generous leave policies, and we have a good vacation plan, but we felt we needed to carve something out to address COVID specifically.
No, and I think that's great. You know, we talked about the population and how stressful it is for working parents right now to figure out how to do their job and teach their kids online and figure out what this ever-changing schedule is. And so I know that leads to, you know, there's job security anxiety, there's wellness anxiety, there's how do I teach my kids anxiety. It's big right now. And it's been a topic at the forefront of conversations that we've heard from CHROs around the world. James, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, Kara. I would add, you know, we saw many of the same things. Our healthcare spend was down, artificially low, but we were watching the mental health issues, and we were watching our employee assistance program. The numbers ticked up, you know, 3 times, 4 times the norm on things such as mental health, spousal issues, anxiety. And so we did some very targeted and intentional programs that we pushed out to our employees to help in that regard. You know, there's only so much you can do to soften the situation, but you try. And so we've done that. And then we also, you know, I think like you all have done, Joyce, is we adjusted our work schedules and flex hours, core working hours for our employees. And we've been very flexible to help meet their work week needs.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. You know, we're talking about a different side of our interactions with employees, and we know through a lot of the research that's been done how important it is for employees to feel heard, to feel like they belong to an organization and that they're understood, and that really helps with engagement, retention, and all those things that we as employers really strive to improve and get better at. What are some of the ways that you've changed the way that you listen to your employees or that you communicate with them through these challenging times? James, you want to start with that one?
Sure. Yeah, we, you know, we continue to administer employee surveys across the organization. We've been doing it, you know, since 1954. So a bit of a pioneer in that regard. And so we use that tool. We also utilize our web site where you can ask HR. We also monitor our ethics hotline calls with that. So many ways to listen. We've also prepared frequently asked questions for our supervisors and managers so they can help cut some of that stuff right at the source when asked. So we've been very intentional about that, trying to update our employees on the business, and really, quite frankly, trying to get in front of the daily newscast that's out there for everybody, and be able to tell our story about how we're managing the crisis, and listening to our employees rather than social media. That's been our approach so far.
Okay. And Joyce?
Well, you are ahead of us. I think we've had an engagement survey for the last maybe 7 years. It was something new we started, I guess, 7 or 8 years ago. And we kicked off a survey right away when we had to go work from home, and then we had listening sessions around that. And then with the George Floyd situation, we added additional listening sessions to our population to get a pulse of what's going on. and we're just about to do our annual survey. And that's unbelievable. You've been doing it that long. That's probably a huge aid for you, because it is for us. As we've, I was even skeptical at first, but it plays so much into our analytics then and validates what we're hearing, and it makes our analytics even more powerful and more predictive with the survey results. So it's been useful for us.
Yeah,
Great.
Joyce and Kara, I would add one more thing here, and that is, most companies have a set of values or value statements that they put on the wall or put on the cards and hand out to the employees. And one of the other things that we've learned here is, it's one thing to have those sets of core values up on the wall, but it's another thing to have an opportunity as a company and leaders to really demonstrate that you mean what you say. And I feel really good that we did just that. And I hope many other companies have had the same opportunity.
I love that you mentioned that. And, it's interesting to decipher some of the good things that have come out of this pandemic. And sometimes it's hard to figure out what those are. But when I talk to CHROs around the country, so many of them have told me that, once the chaos kind of passed, it was really an opportunity in many instances for organizations to slow down for a second and managers to slow down for a second and really listen to their employees, show that they care. We're not running to catch flights or jumping in an Uber or cutting people off between calls, and sometimes seeing their dog in the background or their kids in the background has really helped us to make different connections in many instances. And I think that's been really important. And I know one of the things that I really appreciated that Oracle did is we actually had some training in the field on empathy. And it was from a well-known author and speaker in the UK. And she walked us through a workshop on, how do you empathize not only with your coworkers, but also especially with our customers and understand what they're going through, and how do you have conversations that are focused on empathy. And I think that was something that we all really appreciated and realized how important it was right now too. Last question, and this one is around, of course, technology and what lessons we have from COVID that are either impacting our digital strategy, maybe resequencing our digital strategy, or changing it altogether. So who'd like to go first there?
James, I'll let you.
Okay, I'm happy to take it. Again, one of the things that, we were already under the microscope of an outside activist before this whole process started. So we had some things being cultivated. But definitely we have enhanced our focus, intentionally putting capital dollars toward automation across our facilities. And that's in everything from robotics in our factories to do the really high precision work, to installing the bots in our daily workflows that we have, and getting our resources away from all of the what I call transactional sort of work and get them into the strategic side of what we need to be doing. And I say that for the HR community that I oversee, to engineering and all the other functions. So a very intentional spend of money and partnering with the right organizations and support teams like an Oracle help us really streamline our operations digitally and from an occupational perspective.
Great, thank you. And Joyce?
Well, we saw where we had gaps, exactly to your point, where we had in some places still wet signatures and people had to come in and sign things. And we thought we were further along in some of these areas, eliminating the transactional work and more strategic work. So it was an opportunity for us to lift and shift in that area and bring in certain regions that we thought were further along into service centers. And we're in the process of kind of reimagining all of that for us in HR.
Mhm.
So that was kind of a big surprise and also a big opportunity for us to lift and shift and change as well.
Right. Great. Thank you. And when I listen to a lot of the CHROs that I've been working with, again, I've heard a couple of trends. One has been just basic nuts and bolts foundational of I have got to know where my employees are, who they are, and what that head count is, in many instances from a health and safety standpoint. But then also when there were quick furloughs that needed to be made to be able to process that quickly and efficiently. And so that was one piece that we've been hearing. We've also been hearing in many instances a reprioritization of investments. And that gets, Joyce, at what you talked about with learning. So I was on the phone with, a Fortune 5 customer last week, and they said, oh, we were going to do performance management next, but now we're going to bump up learning because we realize that's really more important. Based on what's going on right now in the world. And so that's been interesting. And then we've seen where there have been some essential workers and organizations that historically have been low margin businesses. And you don't want to say there's winners or losers in COVID, but there have been some businesses that, have really excelled, especially the grocery industry. And we've seen organizations like big grocers make huge investments in technology because in many instances, they've had to double and triple their workforce in the last 6 or 7 months. So, this concept of being resilient applies all over the world, every industry. And I think our big takeaway today is, one, how important the CHRO job is. So I'd like to thank both of you for your time. And really for being great examples of sharing the challenges and wonderful solutions that you've put in place for your organizations in response to the board, the CEO, the workforce, the community. So I thank you for sharing those with us and really having stories that align with our topic about being resilient together. And so for everybody that's out in the audience, I thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to the next time we get back together.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.